Along the Caucasus ranges, travelers have left footprints in the hot sands. Near water sources, remains of agricultural evidence have also been left behind. Caravans from distant lands arrived in this region to trade and to exchange. People from all directions gathered here. Over long periods of settlement, they built the town's history together as different groups of people with a common home. When it comes to life's basic needs, it seems that everyone is in search of stability and safety, as well as hopes and dreams leading to a better life. But many aspects of our world have been weighed down by inequality. A common thread throughout history's disputes and conflicts concerns differences in ethnic origin. The perception of racial divisiveness has given rise to the fight over territory and the violation of people's rights. Long periods of war in the history of humanity have taken away the basic right to peace and happiness. Wherever ways of life have been found to be clearly out of balance, we find conflict. Even though the land, water, skies, and air are natural resources that should be shared by all humans, regardless of their ethnicity. On this trip, we cross over from Armenia to Georgia. The region is full of records, most of all records that have been left behind in the feelings of the people. These stories of locals invite following, like the chapters of a book. Records upon the land of Caucasus. With the dark unknown in the long journey ahead, travelers always sought out places to take a rest. Over many periods in history, Tbilisi hosted the full range of qualities that travelers look for in a resting location. The famous hot springs gave rise to bathhouse businesses, so domes of sulfur baths called banya houses were erected. The sulfur baths, with interiors divided into many rooms, have a history going back to the golden era of the Silk Road. The hot springs run beneath the earth and even inspired the city's name, Tbilisi, which means warm place. The springs bring warmth during winter, but they do make the summers even hotter. The Tbilisi River flows through the city, with both banks lined with houses and shops. Light spread far across the nightscape, as though the people of this city never sleep. People of many different ethnic and cultural groups have known this place throughout history. There wouldn't have been anyone in the wider region who didn't know of this town that was so enchanting that people from far and wide wanted to have this place for their very own. Taking a walk around the historic district is much like traveling back in time. In the architecture, we see records of the eras and transitions of empires of the Greeks, Romans, Byzantine, Ottoman, Mongols, and Russians. Some records have been buried over time. New structures have been built in their place. These processes of destruction and replacement occurred over the course of 1,564 years. Just walking around town is a way of studying the history and events that led the different ethnic groups to this area, where they left behind their marks and memories. Old buildings along Chardonnay Street have been renovated and opened as modern restaurants and cafes. We record images of the local cuisine blending with the surrounding atmosphere. The year 1958 marked Tbilisi's 1,500th anniversary, and the statue of the Mother of Georgia was erected. A Georgian sculptor designed the aluminum figure of a lady in Georgian natural dress. She symbolizes the Georgian character with a sword in her right hand and a bowl of wine in her left. If she could move her lips, we would most likely hear her say, "CAUCASUS," and there would most likely be glasses clinking as she warmly welcomes us upon our arrival. If aerial images can be captured by drone, we will see that every corner of the city reveals a unique enchantment, and it will be difficult to get lost since there are landmarks in each area. The statue of Waktang I Jorgasali on horseback embodies the legend of a 5th century king who built the old capital of Misgeta. The king's son then transferred the center of power to present-day Tbilisi. In Freedom Square stands the statue of St. George slaying a dragon. The saint is believed to have helped to uphold the country's Orthodox faith. In this same location once stood a statue of Vladimir Lenin, the former Soviet leader. The statue was pulled down in August of 1991 following Georgia's declaration that Soviet Georgia was no more and that the independent nation of Georgia had been born. Following the disintegration of the Soviet Union, the Caucasus region became a scene of political instability. Newly independent states were thrown into conflict. Some ethnic groups were unable to build a nation state for themselves aside from their reliance on Russia and the allied nations. Instead of what would have otherwise been a peaceful way of life for the people, conflicts were fueled into war. From Tbilisi, we head northeast to the Georgian Ossetian conflict zone, where there's an ethno-political conflict over Georgia's former autonomous region of South Ossetia. From where we stand, we look ahead past the barbed wire fence where Skinwali lies, as the capital of the disputed de facto independent republic of South Ossetia. This is the birthplace of 70-year-old Leah Shaladchise. She now lives peacefully alongside the people of Ossetia. She's never felt any difference. If anyone asked her if she's Georgian or Ossetian, she really doesn't want to answer due to the divisiveness inherent in her response. She sees those who live alongside her as friends and relatives. The people of South Ossetia were assigned a Georgian national identity. In times that followed, South Ossetia declared itself an independent state as a breakaway region from the Tbilisi government. Russia took advantage of the conflict in South Ossetia as justification to invade. A 5-day war followed, and the village of Anedi suffered damages to the point where Leah was unable to return to her birthplace.
This is the line for Leah's grandparents. The cemetery is on the other side. And according to Georgian traditions, when we celebrate Easter, it is our tradition to take the Easter Pascha or sweet bread to the cemetery. As she couldn't cross over to visit the cemetery of her father, she was trying to put it just on the other side of this border. And then later, this is the moment then the Russian soldiers are appearing from other side. They didn't touch this. They allowed her to put this Pascha on the other side, but then they would pick a picture, took some photos.
Even after the war came to an end, the villagers still could not find happiness. This is a politically sensitive zone that has acquired very little attention. The village developed slowly, and remains lacking in basic conveniences which would otherwise allow for normal ways of life. Leah and her neighbors refused to move elsewhere. Leah opened a museum in her rehabilitated house so that the museum can serve as a war memorial. The place is a constant reminder that losses and tragedies resulting from this scale of human aggression must never be repeated.
Local person from this village who was 90 years old was burned inside his house in the bed. What is here represented, she opened S20 Marania. This is the traditional Georgian style of the wine cellar, and she decided to open the museum dedicated to war inside the wine cellar, and all the items here we see those are the remains after the war in 2008, that some houses were burned and you can see some bullets and yes, the details. Though this house was like shot with the Molotov's cocktail. This is something the Russians used during the invasions. It's Russian made, and this house was partly also burned. When after the war, with the help of the British organizations, they helped to clean the villages from the bombs that were around the area, like buried like 4 meters deep underground, and they found on this, and they didn't know all this place was, the house was full with the bombs, and then it turned out that the English organization found 13 bombs in this house around the courtyard. Yes, as we mentioned, this was the traditional wine cellar that belonged to the family. They could put something for storage for the winter, but those are the kvevris, and you know that the kvevri is the wine vessel where Georgians traditionally make the wine. This cellar was closed or locked with this lock. That was she found only in 2017 when they started cleaning the cellar for the museum. As the place was closed, here was 1,000 Celsius, the temperature, the heat, and all the bottles they kept inside the cellar. Of course, they changed the shape because of the heat. They kept the tremali in this one, which is the Georgian traditional sauce. And when they came back to the village, of course, the family left this house. When they came back, the house looked like this.
The farmland here was used to grow apples for distribution to other towns. Other kinds of fruit are also grown by locals as they carry on with their new lives. The fallen trees now feature very prominently in photography. They are metaphors for lives that have been damaged by war that hang upon the dried branches in place of apples. We listen to the stories communicated by each and every image.
We can see the images on the tree was created by Leah. It was symbolic and depended on what she have seen on the day, 19th of August, coming back home. She saw in front of this house there were several apple trees, and she saw that after the bombing, the apple tree was with apples, but after the bombing, the tree was burned, but it has still the burned apples on it, and it was something very, of course, emotional and difficult thing to see. There were apples and also the grapes half burned. After that, her memory, this is so sharp that she decided to bring as a symbol of that memory inside the wine cellar this tree. And then there were several journalists, of course, taking the images and the photographs after bombing, and they make the one day, the evening event, where also they put on the back of the images the memories of the local people telling their memories, what happened with them during the war.
If one generation can see the errors of their ways, there is still time to prevent those mistakes from being repeated in later generations. Leah and her friends are on a common mission. At the very least, the villagers must be able to access education and health care. This is especially the case for children born here who must grow up in this very politically sensitive zone. It's necessary to nurture strength and stability into the character of these children.
They do live here, but of course, at the moment it's peaceful. For them, the most important is the security, which is not guaranteed, because they don't know when can something happen again.
რომ ასე მგონია რომ ალბათ ეს არის საუკეთესო ადგილი სადაც მე საერთოდ დავიბადე. იმიტომ რომ მაქვს ჩემი საყვარელი საქმე, მყავს არაჩვეულებრივი მეგობრები, მყავს არაჩვეულებრივი გარემოცვა და თავისუფლად შემიძლია ვთქვა რომ ძალიან ბედნიერი ვარ იმით, რასაც ვაკეთებ და ბედნიერი ვარ იმით, სადაც ვარ.
აი ომის შესახებ თუ შეგიძლიათ თქვათ თეორი სიტყვა და ომის შემდეგ აი ეხლა რა შეგრძნებები გაქვთ და თუ არის რა შეიცვალა?
ანუ მაშინ როცა ომი იყო, მე ვიყავი 20 წლის. ეს არის ალბათ ჩემს ცხოვრებაში ყველაზე მძაფრი ემოცია, როგორიც ანუ ამაზე უფრო რთული მე ცხოვრებაში არაფერი გამომიცდია, ეს იყო.
და თქვენს ცხოვრებაზე რა ეფექტი მოახდინა ამ ომმა?
იცით, ძალიან შევიცვალე, იმიტომ რომ მივხვდი, უნდა დავაფასოთ ის, რაც გვაქვს, უნდა გავუფრთხილდეთ ერთმანეთს პირველ რიგში, უნდა უფრო მეტად გვიყვარდეს ერთმანეთი და უნდა მოვუფრთხილდეთ იმას და უნდა ვიყოთ ბედნიერები იმით, რაც გვაქვს, იმიტომ რომ ეს შეიძლება მეორე წუთში შეიცვალოს ძალიან მძიმე დანაკარგით და
Manana Chimia Dashwili was 20 years old during the war. This was an age when she was discovering and learning exactly how to develop herself. Despite painful and shocking memories, nothing has discouraged her from returning to help improve the lives of the current villagers. As children of the generation following hers hold hands and play together, the reality sets in that this may not be a very safe playground, but this place will teach the children to be strong and to do everything they can to make things better. From all the images we have seen here, along with the hospitality, we come to the realization that this is the kind of friendship with absolutely no borders. Any differences are temporarily forgotten during our very enjoyable and happy meal. Blessings are spoken before we begin our meal together. The youth chorus sings in a way that holds the audience spellbound. A profound sense of relief can be found in the poetry of Maga Midu Dashwili of the Diaspora Alliance of Georgia, which is a foundation based in Samashabo in South Ossetia.
Bravo,
შეგიძლია რა შეგრძნება ქონდა რომ ეს გითხრა
ზუსტად მაღაზემზე სურს საუბარი როცა დავდექი მე ანუ ჩემი მშობლიური ქალაქის მისადგომებთან ვიდექი და ვუყურებდი აი იმ უკვე შეცვლილ ქალაქს სუსხა სახურავები სუსხა მშენებლობა აბსოლუტურად ყველაფერი და ვფიქრობდი ეს ის ქალაქია, რომელი ქალაქიც მე დავტოვე. ძალიან მნიშვნელოვანი იყო გუშინდელი ვიზიტი, მიუხედავად იმისა, რომ ამდენი წელია მე იქ არ ყოფილვარ, აქტიურად ვერთვები უკვე საქმიანობაში და ჩვენი საქმიანობა მოიცავს კულტურას, ხელოვნებას და აი ჩვენ გვინდა რომ კეთილი მესიჯი გავგზავნოთ ცხინვალელ ოს ახალგაზრდებთან. დიახ.
We now see how the children here are being raised. These fighters are their role models of peace. Despite the tragic conditions of their surrounding reality, the hope and common mission of the people will serve as shields, protecting them as they expand a small sense of beauty to the outside world. This will invite people from all over to extend helping hands by taking part in the nurturing of the apple trees on this land with no ownership. This is their very precious birthplace, and they must do whatever they can to keep it out of harm's way.
ცხინვალის სახელმწიფო უნივერსიტეტში სტუდენტებთან, პროფესორ-მასწავლებლებთან სწორედ ეს არის ჩვენი მისია, რომ მათთან საერთო ენა გამოვნახო, რა თქმა უნდა და ვეტყოდი, რომ წამოსულიყვნენ მშვიდობიანი გზით ჩვენს ქართველ სტუდენტებთან დამეგობრდნენ, ჰქონდეთ კომუნიკაციები, მისვლა-მოსვლა, რომ ის გუშინ რაც ჩვენ ნახეთ, იქ ბლოგპოსტები, ეს აღარ არსებობდეს, იმიტომ რომ ეს ერთი ქვეყანა, ერთი სახელმწიფო, აქ სხვა სახელმწიფო არ არსებობს და ჩვენ კეთილმოსურნე ერი ვართ და იცხოვრონ მეგობრულად ჩვენს გვერდით. ჩემი მაინც საბოლოო სათქმელი ის იქნება, რომ მათთვისაც იმდენად მშობლიურია ცხინვალი და ზოგადად ეგრეთ წოდებული სამხრეთ ოსეთის ტერიტორია, რომელზეც ისინი წლებია დასახლებულნი არიან და ჩვენთან ერთად მეგობრულად ცხოვრობდნენ და მოდიოდნენ, ვიცი რომ მათთვისაც ძალიან მძიმე იქნება იმ ტერიტორიის დატოვება. უმძიმესი, ამიტომ მე მაინც ვისურვებდი მშვიდობას. მოდი ისევ მეგობრულად ვიცხოვროთ. ჩვენ და ოსებმა, ქართველებმა და ოსებმა მესამე ძალის გარეშე.